Hey guys, Taz here, welcoming you to Hiveswap Lore. Here we'll cover the major characters, important locations, and watershed moments that shape Hiveswap's narrative. This series is designed for fans who enjoy Hiveswap but haven't necessarily engaged with Whatpumpkin's other properties. As such, you should be warned that spoilers for Hiveswap, Homestuck, and any other relevant material lies ahead. Now let's get started by exploring the personal category system known as the hero titles, with an in-depth look into how Hiveswap uses it to flesh out one of our major characters, Xefros Tritoh, the Page of Rage. Xefros Tritoh is an all-around very good boy living in the very bad interstellar empire of Alternia. Alternia is a dystopian wasteland kept afloat by a mysterious, all-powerful guardian, the ruthless conquering of other civilizations, and the equally ruthless subjugation of its own people, a species of aliens known as trolls. This subjugation is enforced through the Hemo-spectrum, a strictly enforced caste system that assigns its people different societal standings and corresponding occupations or roles according to where they fall on a spectrum of 12 possible blood colors. As a dark red rust blood, Xefros sits at the bottom of this system, while the fuchsia pink heiress that destroys his suburb during Hiveswap is at the top. Because of this, Xefros and all those like him can look forward to nothing but a lifetime of exploitation, abuse, and suffering. Oh, and also butlering. Xefros has been forcefully assigned the future job of butlering for high blood trolls, and it's with this imposed service that our look at the hero titles begins. In his episode on Mario's Jump and other versatile verbs, Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit explores how designing highly flexible and nuanced verbs is often a great way to provide a player with interesting choices. The idea is that giving characters powerful tools can enhance a player's sense of connection to both the character and the game space, as the interplay between the world and the ways the player characters can manipulate its systems makes both feel more dynamic and fully realized. Hiveswap aims to achieve something similar. However, Hiveswap is a point-and-click adventure game with an emphasis on storytelling, not an action game or even an actual RPG, yet. So instead of determining how the player interacts with the game world, Hiveswap's verbs provide a basis for world building and character development. Every major character in Hiveswap is born with natural tendencies that align them to one of 7 archetypes. The archetype linked to a verb that describes the character's default interaction with reality. The character's class is determined by whether they are an active or passive version of the archetype. The system is complicated further by the hero's aspect, which describes what existential idea the hero interacts with. 2 witches will differ greatly, for example, depending on whether they change life or space. Which brings us to the cultural image of the butler. Butlers, by definition, are ones who serve, meaning their existential relationship to reality is defined by the same verb as the hero classes knight and page. Knights, as the passive version of the archetype, tend to serve for the benefit of others. Dave Strider, for example, spends most of his adventure either engaging in acts of service by helping his friends with their goals, or giving others goods and resources as if on a silver platter. Which brings us back to this kid. Xefros is a butler in training for the Alternian Empire, meaning he's forced to learn to provide food and assistance to high-blooded trolls, with death as the price of failure, all for the benefit of the Empire, not himself. He's also a butler in practice to his best friend Damek, a bronze blood only a single rung above him on the Hemo-spectrum, but a few years older and considerably more driven. So Xefros, like Dave, is in the habit of acting in service to the goals of others rather than following through on goals he sets for himself. And since he thinks about this service primarily through the lens of how much time it costs him and how much time he has left, we can understand Xefros at least partly as a different interpretation of the title Knight of Time. But ending our search there would be ignoring the most crucial detail, which is that Xefros doesn't have a choice. One of the biggest strengths of the hero title system is showcasing the detrimental effects that can come about when you try to be, or are forced into, acting like someone you're not. Characters forced into roles that don't come naturally to them tend to be either less happy, less effective, or both. And if the denial of their true selves is strong enough, it can force a shift in their aspect alignment as well. And as a system deliberately designed to confuse and subjugate its citizens, the hemospectrum is a corrupting influence itself. Each of the 12 blood castes contains an alphabet of 24 symbols, 2 for each aspect. However, the caste as a whole is linked to the aspect of its true sign, one of the 12 signs from the zodiac we know here on Earth. For Rustbloods, this true sign is Aries, and its associated aspect is time. This means Rustblooded trolls are systematically conditioned into thinking primarily in terms of time, regardless of where their true strengths lie. And Xefros is a textbook example. His thoughts about time are generally concerned with how he doesn't have enough of it. And sure, that's true in the literal sense. He only has a few years before he comes of age and gets exiled off Alternia for a life of brutal slave labor, and Rustbloods like Xefros can only expect to live about 24 sweeps or so, around 51 years old in Earth years. But Xefros is mainly disheartened by how his responsibilities take away time he could be devoting to practicing his true passion. A popular Alternian sport combining billiards and football called arena stickball. Xefros adores arena stickball and aspires to be a star player in his wildest dreams. He keeps an entire room stocked with merchandise and memorabilia from the game's history, including a poster of his personal idol, a star player of the sport known as Zoltan Matsos. Zoltan was a Rustblood just like Xefros, but unlike Xefros' weak telekinetic powers, Zoltan was a force to be reckoned with, who Xefros describes as a figure from history, again noting his relationship to time. Xefros likes to imagine Zoltan as a sort of imaginary friend or supportive mentor, and tries to copy Zoltan's non-traditional way of playing the game to at least some success. Joey Claire unknowingly references this habit of copycatting when she refers to Xefros as Xerox. In the 90s, Xerox was a fairly household name describing a brand of photocopier, meaning a machine designed to copy text and images onto a blank page. As it turns out, Xefros' imaginary friend-like relationship with Zoltan and his copycatting approach to progress are both typical hallmarks of the Page class. As the active counterparts to Knights, Pages are primarily distinguished by a tendency to benefit themselves instead of benefiting others. Their kind-hearted natures and innocent demeanors tends to inspire in others the desire to help pages, so rather than filling the role of a butler themselves, pages tend to find themselves described as being surrounded by butlers, helpers, trainers, or assistants. They tend to attract strong-willed individuals who want to help the page, but might have rather controlling or even abusive ideas of how to go about it. And pages' biggest challenges tend to involve either finding the self-confidence to stand up to bullies, or facing reality and being honest with others about their desires and needs. In the meantime, however, pages both give their aspect to others and inspire service from others through their aspect in turn. We see Xefros engage in both behaviors with Joey, as he gives her not time, but his true aspect, rage. Rage describes negative emotions and the ways they make us focus on whatever we perceive brings them about. It's also associated with doubt to contrast its opposing aspect's affiliation with the concept of belief. The Ragebound are bringers of confusion, and they can be frustratingly difficult to sway when they've gotten attached to an idea. All of which we see as Joey is by turns confused by and furious with Xefros' lack of self-confidence and the bizarre truth of life on Alternia. This can be read as Xefros unwittingly serving Joey rage. But soon enough, as Joey gets to know Xefros, she becomes concerned for him, thinking of him as someone in need of help, as Damek seemingly did. Both Damek and Joey are in turn moved to provide Xefros with rage, in their own unique ways. Damek forces Xefros to sleep on the floor instead of in the Recuperacune traditional to trolls. The Recuperacune is filled with a substance called soap or slime, meant to protect trolls from the horrific nightmares of gore and bloodshed that pervade the species' collective unconscious. Said nightmares are in turn caused by shuckle voodoos, a type of psychic power different from Xefros' telekinesis and communion with the dead, often held by one of the castes of troll highest on the hemospectrum, purple bloods. The Empire uses the rage-coded chuckle voodoos to keep trolls fearful, angry, and distrustful of each other. So Xefros, having seemingly developed an immunity to the chuckle voodoos, gives him a unique skill that could come in handy against the Empire. In effect, Xefros has been given rage to his own benefit. Still a dick move though, dammit. Joey, on the other hand, becomes so furious at Xefros' mistreatment at the hands of Dammit and the Alternian Empire that she all but embodies the idea of rage in the climax of Hiveswap Act 1. While an aspect like rage might seem intrinsically negative, this is misleading. In the right context, rage is important and even valuable. You'll always find it in the righteous protest or in the rightful critic. And that's because the ability to perceive the raw reality of injustice, and the focus and fury necessary to smash the mechanisms that inflict it, are both concepts closely intertwined with rage. This means the aspect is crucial in some contexts, such as when you're sticking up for a mistreated friend, or looking to spearhead a major rebellion, which is why it matters that when Xefros offers his empty justifications for his relationship with Dammit, Joey is the one to tear them down. And when Xefros belittles himself using stereotypes about Rustbloods propagated by the Empire, Joey is the one who tears down the lies of the Hemospectrum, praises Xefros for his strengths, and tries to get him to believe in himself. In the traditional page way, Xefros' innocence and kindness has won him a champion in Joey. So what will we learn about who Xefros really is and what he's really capable of, as he works to discover his true self and find the other members of the rebellion with Joey's assistance? Between Joey's passion for the spotlight and Xefros' ability to stoke the furious flames of rebellion in those who get to know him, maybe the Rebel Network has found its secret weapon after all? Interesting questions to consider as we wait for Act 2. This video exists thanks to the support of my wise cohort of patrons. If you'd like to summon more videos like this onto your screen, then you can join them. Also make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another video. That's all for now. Until next time, keep rising.